He stood in the third row. He wore a dark suit and held his hat in both hands, and when the pastor asked those who loved her to bow their heads, he bowed his. He signed the condolence book with his own name. He shook the hands of her family. He looked her mother in the eye and said he was sorry for her loss. He had killed her 9 days before. That is not a story about a criminal who panicked. That is a story about a man who believed, with total, terrifying certainty, that he would never be caught. A man so confident in his own invisibility that he stood over her grave while her children wept and felt nothing. And it would take nearly 30 years, a DNA database that did not exist when she died, and a retired detective who kept a single accordion folder in a box in his garage to finally give her name back to her family. But before we get to any of that, we have to go back to the fall of 1993. Because to understand what was lost on that October night, and what it cost the people who loved her, you first have to understand who Donna Schaefer was. Millbrook, Illinois was the kind of place where people left their side doors unlocked and their car windows down all summer. A farming community of about 4,000 in Kendall County, tucked between the Fox River and flat corn country that stretched to the horizon in every direction. In the fall of 1993, the trees along Route 34 had just begun to turn, and the smell of harvest, dust and diesel, and something sweet from the grain elevator on the edge of town hung in the air the way it did every October. Donna Schaefer was 41 years old. She worked the morning shift at a family-owned diner on the main road, a job she'd held for 11 years. And she was the kind of employee that other diners tried to steal, fast, warm, and remembered every regular's order without writing it down. Her coworkers called her Donnie. Her children, Kevin, who was 16, and Lisa, who was 13, called her Mom in the specific way teenagers do when they're asking for something, and in the different way they do when they actually mean it. She drove a 1988 Buick Century with a crack in the passenger side mirror that she kept meaning to fix. She had a vegetable garden behind her house that went every year from perfect to overgrown by August, because she was better at starting things than finishing them, a quality her daughter would describe with a smile in an interview given decades later. She had a standing Tuesday night phone call with her sister in Rockford that went until at least 10 o'clock, and she was saving, she told anyone who asked, to visit their family in Germany someday. October in Millbrook meant the high school football team and the volunteer fire department carnival, and the smell of leaves burning in backyard piles, even though the county fire marshal had asked people to stop doing that. It meant VH's tapes of horror movies rented from the Video Village on Main, and it meant the local diner being full by 6:30 every Friday night, with families who didn't want to drive to Aurora. It was an ordinary, decent life, the kind that doesn't make headlines until something goes wrong. Donna left work at 2:15 on the afternoon of Friday, October 8, 1993. She stopped at the IGA on her way home and bought milk, a box of pasta, and a bag of Halloween candy she hid in the hall closet. She called Lisa from the payphone outside to say she'd be home in 20 minutes. That was the last conversation her daughter would remember for the rest of her life. She never came home. Lisa waited until 4 o'clock. Then until 5. She called the diner. They said Donna had left hours ago. She called her Aunt Karen in Rockford, who told her to call a neighbor, who told her to call the police. The Kendall County Sheriff's Office received the missing persons call at 6:48 p.m. Deputies drove the route between the IGA and Donna's house 3 times that evening. On the second pass, at 8:22 p.m., a deputy named Carl Hess found her Buick Century parked on a gravel turnaround at the end of Hoover Road, a dead-end lane that ran along an irrigation ditch about 1.5 miles east of town. The driver's side door was not fully closed. The keys were in the ignition. Her groceries were in the back seat. The Halloween candy was still in the bag. The department called in additional officers. By 10 p.m., a search grid had been established. By midnight, state police had been notified. They found Donna Schaefer's body at 6:14 the next morning, in the tall grass beside the drainage ditch, 40 yards from her car. The cause of death, as established by the Kendall County coroner, was homicidal violence. She had been struck. The case file would later note that there were no signs she had been inside the vehicle when the attack occurred. The evidence indicated she had gotten out, or been made to. The first clue was small, and no one paid it much attention in the first hours. On the gravel near the Buick's driver's side door, a deputy photographed what appeared to be a partial boot print, larger than Donna's, pointing toward the drainage ditch. It was photographed. It was measured. It was placed into the file. But there was a second detail, quieter still. In the condolence book at Donna Schaefer's funeral, held on a Monday at St. Mary's Church on Elm Street, 128 names were written. The family had counted them because it made them feel, temporarily, less alone. Records would later confirm that one of those signatures belonged to a man who had been seen on Hoover Road the same day Donna disappeared. A man who had, when questioned in the days following, said he knew her only casually. He was not flagged as a suspect. He was recorded as a community member paying his respects. His name went into the file and was not revisited. Kevin Schaefer, who was 16 years old and had to identify his mother's car in the evidence impound lot 3 days after she died, would spend the next 29 years wondering who had done this to her. He would never fully stop. Neither would one particular detective. Detective Ray Kowalski had been with the Kendall County Sheriff's Office for 14 years when Donna Schaefer was murdered. He was 52, a compact man with a habit of carrying a legal pad instead of a notebook because, as he later explained in a 2021 interview, he liked to be able to draw timelines without running out of space. He had worked homicides before. He had not worked one that stayed with him the way this one did. In the first 2 weeks, investigators developed a primary suspect, a man named Gary Putnam, who had been seen arguing with Donna in the diner parking lot 6 days before her death. Witnesses said it was heated. Putnam told investigators they had a disagreement over money she owed him, a debt he said had gone unresolved for months. He had an alibi for the afternoon of October 8th, 2 co-workers who placed him at a job site in Oswego between noon and 4 o'clock. It was corroborated. Investigators moved on. What they could not move past was the question of who else had been on Hoover Road that day. Donna had no history of driving out there. Her route home did not pass it. She had no connection to the landowner, a soybean farmer named Ed Carlisle, who confirmed he had not seen her that afternoon, and whose alibi was likewise verified. Investigators theorized that she had been followed, that whoever killed her had intercepted her somewhere between the IGA and her house and directed, or forced, her to that dead end. The evidence gathered in those early weeks included the partial boot print, a fiber collected from the exterior of the driver's side door, and a biological sample recovered at the scene. In 1993, that sample was sent to the state crime lab in Springfield with a request for blood typing. The results confirmed it was not Donna's blood type. It could not, with the technology available, do anything more. That was where the case stopped moving. Meanwhile, Kevin and Lisa Schaefer were placed in the custody of their Aunt Karen. They enrolled in the Rockford School District in January 1994 and tried to find something that resembled a normal life. Karen Schaefer, who was 45 years old when her sister was killed, told investigators in a follow-up interview 18 months later that she checked the mailbox every day hoping for something. She called the sheriff's office, once a month, every month, for 8 years. By 1996, the department had moved the case into its cold case file. Ray Kowalski, who had not made an arrest, did not accept that as a resolution. He made copies of the key documents before they were transferred. He kept the legal pad with his original timeline. He kept a photograph of Donna Schaefer taken at a work Christmas party in 1991, where she was laughing at something just out of frame. He put all of it into an accordion folder, then into a cardboard box that sat first in his office at home, and then, after his retirement in 2003, in his garage in Sandwich, Illinois, behind the lawnmower and a collection of his daughter's skis from a trip they took in 1999. He did not throw it away. The years have a way of burying things. By 1997, 4 years had passed, and the Schaefer case had not appeared in the Kendall County paper since the anniversary piece the previous October. The diner where Donna worked was under new ownership. The house on Maple Street where her children had grown up had been sold, and then sold again to a young family whose youngest daughter used Donna's old garden as a place to keep rabbits. By 2003, Kevin Schaefer was 30 and working in manufacturing in the Quad Cities. He had married. He had a daughter he named Michelle after his grandmother. He did not speak about his mother at Michelle's birthday parties or at Christmas dinner, because there was no way to speak about her without the conversation becoming something else. But he kept a photograph in his wallet, the same one from the Christmas party that Ray Kowalski had in his garage, and he told his daughter about her grandmother in the specific way that people describe someone they are still trying to understand. Lisa Schaefer, by that same year, had finished a nursing degree and was living in Champaign. She gave an interview to a cold case blog in 2007 that reached approximately 40 people. In it, she described the experience of losing her mother at 13 as having a silence at the center of everything afterward, a phrase the interviewer quoted and that Lisa never entirely forgave herself for saying, because it was too accurate and too private. The boot print had never yielded a match. The fiber had not been connected to any known individual. The biological sample sat in a sealed evidence tube in the Springfield lab, correctly preserved, waiting. Ray Kowalski, retired, came back to the Kendall County Sheriff's Office as a volunteer cold case consultant in 2009. He was 68 years old. He told the department's new commander that he had 3 cases he'd never let go of, and the Schaefer case was first among them. Every case on this channel represents weeks of research, verifying facts, and piecing together lives that deserved better. If you want us to keep uncovering the truth behind stories like this one, take a second to like and subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now let's get back to Donna. The case had been cold for 20 years when, in the summer of 2013, something happened that no one in Millbrook had anticipated. But the break that actually broke it open would not come until 6 years after that, and it would begin in a garage in Sandwich, Illinois, with a retired detective and a phone call he almost did not answer. Ray Kowalski answered it on the 4th ring. It was February of 2019, a Thursday morning, and the woman on the line was a forensic genealogist named Patricia Helms, who worked as a contractor for the Illinois State Police's cold case unit. She asked him if he was the Ray Kowalski who had worked the Schaefer case in 1993. He told her he was. She asked him if he still had access to his original case notes. He went out to the garage. He came back in with the folder. Genetic genealogy, the process of uploading a crime scene DNA sample to public ancestry databases and tracing its distant relatives back to identify an unknown contributor, had recently become standard practice for cold cases with preserved biological evidence. The technology works the same way the websites, where ordinary people research their family history work. Except that instead of starting with a name and looking for relatives, investigators start with unknown Dina and follow the family tree in reverse until they arrive at a single living person. The biological sample from the Schaefer crime scene, taken in October 1993, had been uploaded to a genealogy database 18 months earlier as part of a statewide cold case Dina initiative. In February 2019, Patricia Helms had a preliminary genetic match, not to a name, but to a family cluster centered in Kendall County, Illinois. She asked Kowalski if any of the family names in his original notes matched a short list she read aloud. The third name, she said, he recognized. "Say that again," Kowalski told her. She said it again. He sat down. The name was Dennis Garland. He was 64 years old, a retired auto parts distributor who had lived in Aurora since 1998. Before that, he had lived for more than a decade in Millbrook, where he had been, by all observable accounts, an ordinary man. A neighbor who helped with fence lines, a face at the 4th of July, a pallbearer at more than one funeral in the community he'd grown up in, including Donna Schaefer's. Garland had appeared in the original investigation as witness 41 of 128, one of the names in the condolence book. One of the people who had told investigators he knew Donna only in passing. His interview, conducted on October 17, 1993, had lasted 22 minutes. He had been cooperative. He had expressed what investigators noted as appropriate grief. Records confirmed that Garland had grown up 2 streets from Donna Schaefer's childhood home. His sister had been 2 years behind Donna in school. He had known her, investigators would later establish, for more than 30 years. He had known exactly who she was when he stood over her grave. Dennis Garland had been the kind of man whose neighbors, in the weeks after his arrest, would each describe independently with the same word, quiet. He hadn't caused trouble. He hadn't attracted attention. He had retired from his distribution route in 2014, and his neighbors in Aurora knew him as the man who kept his driveway swept and brought in other people's packages during rainstorms. He had no criminal record. He had a daughter in Naperville and a son in Phoenix. He had, court documents confirmed, attended the funerals of at least 3 people he knew from Millbrook in the years following Donna Schaefer's death. His connection to Donna, investigators established over the spring and summer of 2019, ran deeper than his 1993 interview had revealed. He had worked briefly at the same grain elevator where Donna's father had worked in the late 1970s. He had, witnesses told detectives, carried a long and unspoken resentment toward a member of Donna's family over a property boundary dispute in the late 1980s. A dispute that had never been formalized, never been adjudicated, and never been resolved. Whether it was the origin of what happened on October 8, 1993, investigators could not say with certainty. What the Dina confirmed was that Dennis Garland had been present at the scene. His Dina was obtained through a discarded coffee cup in November 2019. A technique known as abandoned sample collection, requiring no warrant. It matched. The match probability, according to the State Crime Lab's report, was 1 in 7.4 billion. On March 4, 2020, Kendall County Sheriff's deputies and Illinois State Police officers arrived at Dennis Garland's home in Aurora at 7:15 in the morning. He answered the door in a bathrobe. He looked, according to one deputy's later account, entirely unsurprised. He was placed under arrest on charges of first-degree murder. His neighbor across the street, who watched from her front window, later told a local reporter she had lived next to him for 11 years. She had thought, she said, that she knew him. She did not cry. She was simply quiet for a long time. Garland's daughter issued a statement through an attorney saying she was devastated and had no knowledge of any events from 1993. His son declined to comment. In the Kendall County court system, Garland's case moved through 2 continuances before he entered a guilty plea in September 2021. He was sentenced to 35 years. He was 66 years old at sentencing. He made no statement to the court. Kevin Schaefer, who was 44, sat in the second row of the courtroom that morning. His wife sat beside him. His daughter Michelle, who was now 17 and who had recently begun asking questions about the grandmother she had never met, sat on his other side. When the judge read the sentence, Kevin did not react visibly for a long moment. Then he put his hand over his eyes. That was all. There is a photograph of Donna Schaefer taken in the summer of 1992, a year before she died. She is standing in her backyard in Millbrook next to the vegetable garden that would go from perfect to overgrown by August, and she is laughing. Kevin, who is 15 in the picture, is laughing at something behind the camera. Lisa, who is 12, is trying not to laugh and failing. The garden behind them is, just barely, still under control. The tomatoes are red. The light is late afternoon. Lisa Schaefer, speaking at a press conference following the guilty plea, said that justice was real, but that it was also strange. She had spent 28 years imagining how she would feel if this day ever came, and the feeling she actually had was one she had not imagined. She felt tired. And then, underneath the tiredness, something smaller and quieter, something she recognized, she said, as gratitude. Kevin, in a written statement released through the Kendall County Sheriff's Office, said that he wanted people to understand that the investigation had never truly stopped. He named Ray Kowalski by name. He named Patricia Helms by name. He said that there were people who had kept his mother's name alive for 27 years, and that he would not let that go unacknowledged. Kowalski, who was 78 years old at the time of the arrest and had returned the accordion folder to the sheriff's office by then, told the Aurora Beacon News that he didn't think of it as persistence so much as he thought of it as simple arithmetic. The case was unsolved. Someone had to keep working it. He happened to be the one still standing. The Schaefer case would later be cited in a statewide review of cold case law protocols as an example of what proper evidence preservation and renewed investigative attention could accomplish. At least 2 other Kendall County cold cases from the same era were subsequently re-examined using genetic genealogy. One yielded a match. What happened on Hoover Road on October 8, 1993, could not be undone. The years that followed it could not be returned to Donna Schaefer's children. But the truth, however late, found its way to the light. And that is the only thing in this kind of story that ever does. What do you think, after 28 years, does a guilty plea feel like justice to a family? Or just the closest thing available? And what does it say about a man that his response to killing someone was to attend her funeral? Was that cruelty, arrogance, or something colder than either word can describe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if this case made you wonder how many others like it are still waiting to be solved, that question is worth sitting with. Justice found Donna Schaefer after 28 years. Stories like hers are why this channel exists. If you believe truth is worth pursuing no matter how long it takes, subscribe. More cases are waiting in the description below. Thank you for being here.